In our first lesson, the author of the Wisdom of Solomon meditates on the fact of death in a world created by a loving God. God did not make death, and he does not delight in the death of the living. For he created all things so that they might exist. The generative forces of the world are wholesome, and there is no destructive poison in them. And the dominion of Hades is not on earth, for righteousness is immortal. God created us for incorruption, and made us in the image of his own eternity. But through the devil's envy, death entered the world, and those who belong to his company experience it. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
A song of God's mercy, a canticle of profound and abiding trust in God in every circumstance. And we'll say this together in your bulletin, Lamentations. This I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for one to bear the yoke in youth, to sit alone in silence when the Lord has imposed it, to put one's mouth to the dust. There may yet be hope. To give one's cheek to the smiter and be filled with insults. For the Lord will not reject forever. Although he causes grief, he will have compassion according to the abundance of his steadfast love. For he does not willingly afflict or grieve anyone. In our New Testament lesson, the Apostle Paul encouraged the Corinthians to be generous in their contributions to a collection he has been gathering for the relief of the church in Jerusalem. 2 Corinthians 8. As you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in utmost eagerness, and in our love for you, so we will want you to excel also in this generous undertaking. I do not say this as a command, but I am testing the genuineness of your love against the earnestness of others. For you know the generous act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. And in this matter I am giving my advice. It is appropriate for you who began last year not only to do something, but even to desire to do something. Now finish doing it, so that your eagerness may be matched by completing it according to your means. For if the eagerness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. I do not mean that there should be relief for others and pressure on you, but it is a question of a fair balance between your present abundance and their need, so that their abundance may be for your need, in order that there may be a fair balance. As it is written, the one who has much did not have too much, and the one who has little did not have too little. Hear the Spirit is saying to the church. Hear what the Spirit is saying to the church.
Thanks be to God.
The Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ according to St. Mark.
Glory to you, Lord Christ.
When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered round him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the leaders of the synagogue named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and he begged him repeatedly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be made well and live." So Jesus went with him. And a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, for she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace, be healed of this disease." While he was still speaking, some of the people from the leader's house came to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they had said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." He allowed no one to follow him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. And then he put them all outside, and took the child's father and the child's mother, and those who were with him, and went in to where the child was. And he took her by the hand. And he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about. She was 12 years of age. At this, they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat.
Cuando Jesús regresó en la barca al otro lado del lago, se le reunió mucha gente, y él se quedó en la orilla. En esto llegó uno de los jefes de la sinagoga, llamado Jairo, que al ver a Jesús se echó a sus pies y le rogó mucho, diciéndole, «Mi hija se está muriendo, ven a poner tus manos sobre ella, para que sane y viva». Jesús fue con él, y mucha gente le acompañaba, apretujándose a su alrededor. Entre la multitud había una mujer que desde hacía 12 años estaba enferma, con derrames de sangre. Había sufrido mucho a manos de muchos médicos y había gastado todo lo que tenía, sin que le hubiera servido de nada. Al contrario, iba de mal en peor. Cuando oyó hablar de Jesús, esta mujer se le acercó por detrás, entre la gente, y le tocó la capa, porque pensaba, tan solo con que llegué a tocar su capa, quedaré sana. Al momento, el derrame de sangre se detuvo, y sintió en el cuerpo que ya estaba curada de su enfermedad. Jesús, dándose cuenta de que había salido poder de él, se volvió a mirar a la gente y preguntó, ¿quién me ha tocado la ropa? Sus discípulos dijeron, ¿ves que la gente te oprime por todos lados y preguntas, ¿quién me ha tocado? Pero Jesús seguía mirando a su alrededor para ver quién lo había tocado. Entonces la mujer, temblando de miedo y sabiendo lo que le había pasado, fue y se arrodilló delante de él y le contó toda la verdad. Jesús le dijo, hija, por tu fe has sido sanada. Vete tranquila y curada, ya de tu enfermedad. Todavía estaba hablando Jesús cuando llegaron unos de casa del jefe de la sinagoga a decirle al padre de la niña, tu hija ha muerto. ¿Para qué molestar más al maestro? Pero Jesús, sin hacer caso de ellos, le dijo al jefe de la sinagoga, no tengas miedo. Cree solamente. Y no dejó que lo acompañaron más que Pedro, Santiago y Juan, el hermano de Santiago. Al llegar a la casa del jefe de la sinagoga y ver el alboroto y la gente que lloraba y gritaba, entró y los dijo, ¿por qué hacen tanto ruido y lloran de esa manera? La niña no está muerta, sino dormida. La gente se rió de Jesús. Pero él los hizo salir a todos, y tomando al padre, a la madre y a los que le acompañaban, entró a donde estaba la niña, la tomó de la mano y le dijo, Talita cum, que significa muchacha, a ti te digo, levántate. Al momento, la muchacha, que tenía 12 años, se levantó y echó a andar. Y la gente se quedó muy admirada. Pero Jesús ordenó severamente que no se lo contaran a nadie. Y luego mandó que dieron de comer a la niña.
The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. On February the 14th of this year, 2018, Jonathan Brown gave me a phone call in San Marino at 11:22. Inviting me on behalf of the vestry and the parish to become the 7th rector of St. Paul's, and I was delighted. February 14th is Ash Wednesday, day of penance, the day we begin Lent. And so I walk into the 12 o'clock service ready to impose ashes on the foreheads of those so desiring, with a big silly grin on my face. And I said, you better start feeling dour here, George. So I tried to rein it in a bit. But February 14th was also Valentine's Day. So in the months ahead, you've got a choice. Either Jonathan Brown in the vestry has visited upon you a plague of penance, or he has brought you a Valentine. And I know which I'm hoping for. And like an over-eager fiancé who couldn't wait to meet his bride, I showed up a week early. So I was with you last Sunday and enjoyed worshiping with you. I felt like it was just the biggest, bestest present ever to begin to meet you and to worship together. It was also the day after, on Saturday, that I received my very first letter at the Adama Courier. It was a birthday card, because the 24th of June was my birthday, from my dear friends Joe, Jean, and Dan Angeloff. And on the front of that birthday card is a photo of an arresting officer speaking to a priest, which reminds me of a joke. So the policeman says, "Reverend, have you been drinking? Because you are weaving down the road and your breath stinks." And the priest says, "Officer, I can't believe that you would say such a thing. I just had a wee dram of water. The wet wee whistle for the long road. It's here beside me on the passenger seat." So the officer leans in and he says, "I am sorry to say, Father, but that looks to me like a bottle of wine with a pork stuck in it sticking out of a brown paper bag." And the priest says, "I am astonished. Officer, I believe he's gone and done it again." But people in the first century, as we read in our gospel, were living on razor's edge. They were living on the edge of a cliff. It was a tough time in Palestine. If you survived infancy, then only a third of children lived to the age of 6. If you survived that, 60% lived to 15. If you survived that, 75% to the age of 25. 90% of those born in Palestine, 90% were dead by the age of 45, and only 3% made it to the age of 60. Can you imagine how grievous such times must have been? So Jairus had reason to be worried when his daughter, age 6, came down with a grave illness. He had reason to become desperate. Jairus was a man of privilege, a member of the elite. He was, we are told, a pious man. He was the senior warden of his synagogue. A pious man like Joe Whitmore himself. Pious Joe, we're going to call him. Jairus is absolutely desperate. Jesus did not always find favor amongst the elite. Jairus rips everything and goes to Jesus and asks Jesus for help, and Jesus says, let's go. And so they set out to Jairus' home, and just like in San Miguel de Allende, it turns into a parade. And they're on their way to Jairus' house, and in the middle of the parade is interrupted by a woman who is also desperate. She has been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years, and she has tried everything. She has suffered under the hands of many physicians, we're told. And one of the cures that the Talmud then prescribed for hemorrhages was to carry about in a linen bag the ashes of a roasted ostrich, which I'm sure was incredibly helpful. Because she had a hemorrhage, she would have been considered unclean, which means nobody could have sat where she sat or slept where she slept. She wasn't supposed to go out in public, and she certainly wasn't supposed to elbow her way through a throng of people and touch the hem of a rabbi, however unconventional that rabbi may have been. This desperate woman broke all convention and all law because she knew she needed God's help. So I ask you, how do we define faith? What is faith really? Is faith commitment to a dogma? Is it commitment to a spiritual sensation? Or is faith insistence on finding God in any and every circumstance, even and perhaps especially when we are desperate and we know we've come to our wits' end and we're on the edge of a cliff? Maybe faith has about it a whiff of desperation. And so, if that is true, as I think it is, if we are to represent Christ in this place, at St. Paul's, we must be people who are insistent about seeking for Christ in every situation, among people who have perhaps tried everything else, who are hurt to the bone, down where bone meets spirit. For those who are marginalized, we have to be people who help them insist to know God in the most difficult of circumstances. Finally, the parade ends. As the parade comes to a conclusion, they come to Jesus and they say, it's no use, the girl is dead. Jesus persists. And he arrives at Jairus' house and he says, not so fast. And the first century people were not naive. They knew that dead is dead. And so they laughed at Jesus. And Jesus puts them out, and he takes Jairus and his wife and a few of the disciples into the room. And he reaches out to that woman and he says to her, Talitha Kumi, get up! And she does. She gets up. And she walks around. And Jesus says, give her something to eat so that she can get on with a joyful life. God would come to you in a place where you have been dead for a long time. God will come to you where spirit meets the bone, a place where you have never been, perhaps ever, fully alive, a place where you have never actualized your full potential or the power given to you in the name of Christ. God would meet you there. Maybe you feel sometimes as though you have burned too many bridges in this world. Maybe you feel sometimes that you are too young Probably not in this congregation. Maybe you feel sometimes that you are too old to do new things. Maybe you feel you are too poor or too defined by gender or convention or class. And God is not saying to you in this gospel today, God is not saying to you, rouse a bit, stir around on the couch, would you? God is saying to you, get up, walk around, have something to eat. Life is full, rich, good, and vital, and God is with you in every circumstance, even when you are desperate. You know, there are a great many voices in that room at Jairus' house. A lot of voices that said, you don't make any difference, Jesus. All that has been done can be done. And you will hear those same voices from time to time in the house of your own soul. You will hear those same voices from time to time in the church. You are dead wherever you feel no sense of desperation to live fully. No sense of desperation to love as fiercely as Christ loved. And so now at St. Paul's is the time to contend and to strive and to persevere, sometimes in unseemly ways, to elbow ourselves through the crowd and to stretch out and touch the hem of the garment. I don't know whether you will find me a great penance or a lovely Valentine, but one thing I can tell you with certainty, I will, one way or the other, consistently tell you over and over again, Talitha Kumi, get up.